Hello everyone. Today I am going to share a very important video. If you find it as important as I do, then please share it with all of your family and friends. In short, we are going to show with 3D modeling software how sunrises and sunsets prove the Earth is flat. Of course, flat Earth doesn't mean there aren't oceans, mountains, valleys, terrain, etc. The term flat Earth means that there is no Earth curvature, no globe, no ball, and no outer space. In other words, reality. A huge thanks to Paul for making the video you're going to see in a few minutes. Paul was inspired to share the truth, and he has stepped up and spent a long time using his expertise to develop this model without any compensation. Paul is an engineer and computer graphics artist who owns a 3D product animation studio. He contacted me a few months back wanting to do some 3D animations for Flat Earth. Paul and I worked together on this production. If you like his work and want to talk to Paul about 3D product animations or any other 3D content, he specializes in technical product animation. This is Paul's email address for business inquiries. I also want to thank Shadow Reveal, who is an architect who was instrumental in providing advice in making this presentation. According to the official narrative, sunrises and sunsets aren't caused by the sun moving through the sky as it appears daily. Instead, sunsets are supposedly caused by you, the observer, falling backwards at roughly 1,000 miles per hour, while your angle to the sun lowers below your feet and the Earth begins to obstruct the sun until you're entirely in the shadow of the Earth, which results in nighttime. Under the official story, the term sunset is actually a misnomer, because the sun isn't doing anything as you allegedly rotate away from the sun. But for simplicity, we're going to say that the sun is setting, moving, or dropping. And for purposes of this video, we are going to assume an observer roughly at sea level, so that we are talking about the Earth curvature obstructing the sun and not topography. I love this flat Earth evidence because this argument is so simple, and it is dispositive for either side of the globe versus flat Earth discussion. If the globe were real, then the sun must set at an angle lower than the observer's position until the sun drops physically below the observer's feet. That is the simple official narrative. This is the same claim for those few geocentrists who still believe in the globe but claim the Earth is stationary while the local sun and moon rotate around the Earth. On the other hand, flat earthers claim that the sun never sets at an angle lower than your feet. Generally speaking, flat earthers claim the local sun does not physically rise and fall, but simply travels further away from the observer. The sun's apparent setting is caused by perspective and the limitation of the sun's light. What's important here is that, according to the flat Earth model, the sun cannot actually travel below the flat Earth and will never be angled below your feet. For those who like logic, this is a classic modus tollens argument. If P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. If the Earth were a globe, then the sun must set lower than the physical horizon. The sun does not set lower than the physical horizon, therefore the Earth is not a globe. What started all of this was the fact that many globe propagandists have claimed that shadows, like this one of Mount Rainier, are showing an upward shadow of the mountain being cast by a sun that's below the physical horizon. Remember, these globe proponents are claiming the sun is lower than your feet, below the Earth's physical bulge, proving the globe. In fact, what you're seeing here is the top of the mountain casting a shadow on clouds that are physically below the peak. Due to perspective from a lower vantage point, it only appears as though the mountain shadow is angled upwards. Just like these power lines, the power lines aren't growing in size. They're the same size, but perspective makes it look like they're getting bigger. We can say this definitively because there has never been an upward mountain shadow filmed from the apex of a mountain. What's ironic is that this mistaken globe evidence just became the death knell for the globe. You can't have an upward mountain shadow and not have a similar upward Earth bulge shadow causing a similar and noticeable effect. In fact, the globe requires an upward bulge shadow, and that's what we're going to show here today. The first trick of the globe propagandist, like demonstrated by this one, is to show a globe with paper or something else wrapped around it to demonstrate the Earth shadow and claim that the Earth shadow could not hit the clouds because the angle is not there. This demonstration is patently deceptive because the paper is wrapped over the clouds. It's the ground that would be creating the Earth shadow, not the clouds above the Earth. Some globe propagandists will probably claim that the Earth cannot create a distinct visible shadow because the atmosphere supposedly disperses the light of the sun. However, on a clear day, the sun can still create a distinct shadow. Look at this picture of these birds. If a 1-foot-tall bird can cast a distinct and visible shadow, then the bulge of the Earth most certainly would do the same. If small waves can cast a shadow, then the massive Earth bulge would do the same. Now, let's get to Paul's presentation.
Recently, I came across a fascinating set of videos regarding the phenomenon of the apparent shadow casting from Mount Rainier onto some clouds. These videos are from the YouTube channel Taboo Conspiracy. He does some great flat earth videos, so I was eager to hear what his thoughts were on this phenomenon because on its surface, it appears to indicate a globe model. I mean, if the sun can cast a shadow vertically, that would indicate that it is in fact going below the horizon as the globe model claims. In this video, he showed this image. Basically, if the Earth was a globe and the sun was falling over the horizon as the Earth spins, we should see the globe shadow itself shine up on the clouds. This made sense to me, but I really wanted to test it out. So, with my background as an engineer and a CG artist and my familiarity with computer graphics tools, I set out to mock this up with the intention of seeing if this would actually happen. One challenge with 3D programs and space-type projects is scale. Given the supposed distance of the sun being approximately 150 million kilometers or 93 million miles away, and with the Earth with a radius of 6,371 kilometers or 30,959 miles, these sizes are too great to work with in most typical computer graphics programs. This experiment, the nature of typical CG lighting in a, quote, realistic render package is problematic because they typically have a light intensity fall off baked in. As you get further from the subject, the light intensity has to dramatically increase. At the distances proposed by this globe model, the CG programs really can't adequately represent them. The early days of CG lighting, there was a concept of it's called direct lighting, which basically the light doesn't lose power based upon distance. The light itself also has parallel rays and is supposed to simulate the sun from far distances. Luckily, we can replicate the sun in this experiment with a direct or infinite light. See here the harsh shadows that are cast, and as I move the light away, there is no effect on lighting intensity or the shadow sharpness. What does affect the shadow is the angle of the light. So this will be adequate for this experiment. So I built the model with two known caveats. The model would be scaled and the sun would be a direct light with the infinite parallel rays. Overall, this is not a compromise because the experiment is really to see if the globe/ball would also cast a shadow on the clouds as the sun went down. It's really important to build a replica as much as necessary. These principles are really about angles, line of sight, etc. So the essentials to do this, in my mind, were as follows. A scaled Earth globe, a suitable light source such as direct CGI, a cloud layer, a scaled version of the mountain, and really the approximate location and orientation of this photo, the point of view from which this whole thing took place. So the next question was, where was this photo actually shot from? Looking at the site, you can see Mount Rainier in the background. Another prominent feature was the building just in the foreground. It's next to this small body of water. It turns out that it is the Theus Landing Waterfront Apartments. Also, another noticeable feature was the Tacoma Dome in the middle ground just to the right. And then just in front of that was the East 21st Street Bridge. So with all of these locations determined, I could look at a map now to try and approximate this photo location. So looking at Google Maps, we see here the Tacoma Dome. And if you pan a little bit north, you'll see the East 21st Street Bridge. And if you pan a little further north, you'll see this building here that's shaped like an E. It's the Theus Landing Waterfront Apartment. And if you look at the ground photo of the building, it is in fact the exact building. So, if you pan the map up in the line of sight direction, you'll find this building here, which is the Tacoma Sign Company. So while I can't be 100% certain this is where the photo was taken from, it's definitely precise enough for this experiment. So if you zoom out over the whole entire site, this area is what I needed to replicate and build in 3D. Looking at the overall map of this site, we can get some rough dimensions from the location of the photo to Mount Rainier. The distance away from Mount Rainier is approximately 68.2 kilometers or 42.37 miles. You can also see a Google Map 3D view of the site with the prominent features in the frame. So here's the sphere Earth model scaled 1 kilometer to 1 meter. You can see here the radius is 6,371 meters. As we zoom way down into the model, we'll see Mount Rainier. All of this data for Mount Rainier and Tacoma are from DEM data sources, and they have been scaled to 1 kilometer to 1 meter. Now zooming over to Tacoma, you can see the dome, the East 21st Street Bridge, the Theus Apartments, and now you can start to see the location where the camera was placed in this model. So here I will select the camera that was actually set up to view the scene. And you can see now here is our final shot. For verification purposes, I've placed a couple measurement references in the scene. This first one is the height difference in the model from the photograph to the peak of Mount Rainier. You can see that it is 4.378 meters. Mount Rainier is 4.392 meters above sea level in our model, so our camera is placed approximately 14 meters above sea level. Now we can select on the measurement reference for the distance away. You can see that the length is 68.2 meters or 68.2 kilometers scaled. And this reference is very close to the peak of Mount Rainier. Finally, taking all this information into account, let us compare our scene setup with the actual photo. For this experiment, this is more than adequate to demonstrate the concept of a glow bulge shadow. So here is a final render of the entire site based upon DEM data. The scale is correct and the geometry is correct. The site is ready for our experiment. For our experiment, we will be doing a sunrise. Now let's discuss the concept we're trying to demonstrate. The sun is supposedly located 93 million miles away. This distant sun creates a terminator line from the edges of the sphere. This terminator line or bulge shadow represents where the shadow is cast from. So as the Earth rotates, the terminator stays with the sun. For the demonstration purposes, we're moving the sun in this example. This is what happens from a point of view on the Earth. As we zoom in closer, we see our Mount Rainier location and the terminator line interacting with it. And as we zoom even closer, we can see how the terminator line / bulge shadow interacts with the mountain. Now let's add a cloud layer reference line. Where the bulge shadow crosses the cloud reference line, this is where you might expect to see the bulge shadow on the clouds. So based on these angles, the bulge should show up on the clouds in our experiment. Now we arrive at the scene. It's early morning and the sun is rising in the east. The conditions are perfect to see this rare phenomenon of the mountain casting the shadow on the clouds. Let's see what happens. As you can see, as the sun rotates up, it does in fact interact with the spherical Earth and cast a shadow on the clouds from underneath. Our experiment was set up to mimic the Earth as a sphere, the exact size and conditions for a shadow from Mount Rainier on the clouds, and the hypothesis that as the Earth rotates, the sun goes down below the Earth. If the Earth were a ball, this is what we should see under these special conditions. In fact, if the Earth were a ball, we should probably see this almost every night in some fashion or another. For a closer look at what's going on, let's go back to the schematic. If we pause the sun rotation right here where the shadow crosses the cloud layer just to the west of the mountain, here is the image of what we could expect to see. This experiment is a serious blow to the globe model. After working through this experiment, this is another in a long list of proofs that people can do for themselves. Each one of us can go out each morning at sunrise or each evening at sunset and observe this for ourselves. Do you see this shadow across the sky? For me, I've never experienced this visual in my life on this plane, nor have I seen any photos of this phenomenon to date. What I love most about the flat Earth is that it literally is right in front of us, and it points to our Creator and King. I was always a born-again believer, but flat Earth just adds that much more enjoyment to my appreciation of His creation. Every day when I'm outside, I look at this plane with so much more wonder and amazement, knowing that our Creator is right here, right above us, and we are the center of His eye. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I'd like to acknowledge Taboo Conspiracy and Shadow Reveal for their very helpful direction and contribution to this experiment and video. God bless.
Using Paul's globe model simulation, this is what sunrise should look like facing Mount Rainier directly eastward. Again, the Earth's bulge shadow should precede the mountain shadow. In contrast, this is what a sunset should look like if you were facing west. In summary, during both sunrise and sunset, if we lived on a ball, the Earth itself would cast an upward shadow on the clouds above. For sunrise, the bulge shadow would precede the shadow of the mountain or other tall object like this. For sunset, the upward Earth bulge shadow would immediately follow the upward shadow of the mountain. If we lived on a ball, we should see some form of the bulge shadow twice a day on a nearly daily basis. Without question, this never happens in reality. Therefore, the globe Earth is not reality. If the Earth were a globe, then the sun must set lower than the physical horizon. The sun does not set lower than the physical horizon. Therefore, the Earth is not a globe. Thank you for watching.
The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard.